So this episode is going to be about materials, about textures, all those kind of options that you have. Also about how you can texture and make a carpet. Also, I want to place some kind of an image over here. And yeah, let's get going. So first of all, materials. Everything that has to do with materials means we are going to be working in the shader editor. The shader editor is a node-based system, and in here we can edit materials. Right now, if you look at the scene, you can see that all the interior faces are all having the same material. You can assign materials to faces in the right panel here. As you can see right now, all of these faces inside here have the same material, just the standard white material. And it's all actually one object. If I go to edit mode by pressing tab and 3 for face select mode, which is already selected, I can now select faces and assign materials to those faces. So I want a different material for the back wall and a different material for the floor, obviously. And I want some kind of a wooden material for the floor. So what we are going to be doing is we're going to be creating a new material, and for that we're going to hit the plus sign here, and then we're going to hit new, and here we can actually rename it. So we're going to probably call this floor. Also then you can actually switch between materials by pressing this icon here. So if I, for instance, for some reason wanted the floor to have the leaf material, I could select it here and hit assign. Obviously, we do not want that, it's just for the sake of demonstration. So there is a bunch of websites from which you can get what's called PBR textures. And then what you get is all those photos in which you get all those textures here, which you can then plug in. Plugging in those textures is actually relatively straightforward. I would probably want to try this one out first. The manual way of doing this would be to take this, to drag and drop it into the thing, and the height map we don't really need. The metallic map is basically black. I think there's some information there, but yeah, we got the normal map and we got the roughness map. Roughness and normal map, I guess, always do like the most, obviously apart from the base color, because that obviously colors your thing. So for the base color, we want to plug this into the base color, obviously. Now you can see that right now it doesn't really work because we haven't yet unwrapped this face. Unwrapping means telling the computer where the coordinates of those pixels are supposed to be on the three-dimensional mesh data that we have. So what you do is in edit mode you hit U and unwrap, and now it's nice. But it's also too big, as you can see. It's not refined enough. So if we go to what's called the UV editor, select the right picture, which is the wood, I can just search it up here actually, wood parquet base color. We can actually see what we're doing. There we go. So we can now hit A to select everything. And if you now scale this down, it gets bigger. If you scale it up, it gets smaller. Now we have created a UV map, which means that if we go into the object data properties under UV maps, we can also see that this is the UV map that we've just created. We could, in theory, create multiple UV maps and then switch back and forth between them, which is just something I'm quickly going to show you. This can be used for multiple things. On this UV map, I might just maybe scale this up even further. And now you can see that if you switch back and forth between them, the UV map is changing. Also, the way you do this procedurally in the shader editor, so selecting the UV map here, is by hitting Shift A and search for UV map. You plug the UV into the vector of your texture, and then you can actually choose which UV map you want. So you can have this one or this one. And so that also means that, that you could, in theory, have two separate UV maps controlling two separate textures, all going into the same material. For the ambient occlusion, you drop it in with a mix RGB node, put that in between and set the mode to multiply. And what that's going to do is it's going to multiply the brightness of the base color by the brightness of the ambient occlusion. So if the ambient occlusion is white, that just means we are multiplying it by 1, so nothing changes. And if it's black, that just means that there it's multiplied by, I mean, if it's black, it's multiplied by 0, so that is going to be completely black. If it's like 0.2, it's going to be only a fifth of the brightness on that pixel. And so what you can see ambient occlusion do is just adding a little bit of like those natural sort of shadows that you would get. And that's actually also exactly what that is. If you take the ambient occlusion option in Eevee, if you ever happen to be doing something in Eevee and you tick ambient occlusion, you will see that it actually generates exactly the same effect, those kind of natural shadows that you would get. Anyways, that's for the base color and the ambient occlusion. Now there is a metallic map in here, which doesn't contain much information. It's basically almost black, which is the equivalent to 0 black. All white on the texture would be all out metallic. So if I plug this in, we will get yeah, a little bit more information, but the metallic usually doesn't really change much. What actually does change a lot is the roughness map. In this case, I think though the roughness is pretty just gray, I believe, not really much going on there. If there is a lot of stuff going on with the roughness map, that's usually where you get a lot of information and a lot of things that look really cool from. We can actually just check the roughness map and see if it's basically just gray. Yeah, so it's basically all at 50%. So it isn't really doing anything. That's the equivalent of having the roughness at 50%, because this material isn't supposed to be shiny some places, but we will actually try out some shiny materials later on. Then there is the normal map, and the normal map we will plug into a node that's called the normal map. You guessed it. Color goes into color, normal goes into normal, and by default this should be as expected. If we look at this in the rendered view, we can see we got a nice wooden flooring, and it actually looks pretty accurate, I would say. There is more stuff that we can try out. This one we are probably just going to not call floor, we're going to call it wood parquet 61, because that's also what the texture was called on the website. So wood parquet 61, that is it. All this plugging in textures and messing around with everything here is actually something that we can let an add-on in Blender do. I just did it manually once so you guys understand the principles. So Command comma will open up the preferences, and then under add-ons there is the Node Wrangler add-on. Activate that. And so now if you make a new material, and again we got those textures, in this case only 4 of those, and what we're going to do with them now is we're going to hit Shift Control T. We're going to navigate to the folder, which you can by the way do if you don't like the Blender Finder. You can actually just take your own one, drag and drop it into here, and there we go. I'm going to select all of those textures and hit Principal Texture Setup, and this actually connects everything automatically the way you want it to be connected. So we are going to select the bottom face again. We are going to select the Hungarian Parquet and then hit Assign, and we will see how it looks. And I think it looks really cool. So now we can also edit the UV map of this, obviously. And we do this also in the UV editor. We can scale it up and down, do all of our things with it that we want to do with it. The reason why I think this looks better is because it's somewhat more seamless than the other one. So I think if we scale this up by maybe 2, this can actually look even way better than the other one. Always make sure to check it in rendered view, because otherwise you might end up doing something that only looks good in Eevee, which is the material preview render engine. If you don't like the color of, for instance, your base color, you can add a hue saturation node, just plug it in between. And I actually, because I also think the saturation is a little bit over the top, we can now take away some of that saturation to make it a little less sort of in your face that. And you can also change the hue of your texture and everything in here. So that's actually pretty useful to know, I think. And then also if you want to make really fine adjustments to those things, you can actually, for instance, take a math node, plug it into here, and let's say we wanted to only very slightly shift this in one direction. We might add the value 0 here, and then this value is supposed to be a small number between say 0 and 0.5 or something. We might go into a divide thing, and we're going to divide any number by 100 or something. And that way it's actually way easier to really make fine adjustments to the hue. We can obviously also plug in 1000 here, and then we could go up into the 500s to really get it like really easy to control. And we could do the same for the saturation. Just a little trick to give you a little bit more control over your textures. I think the saturation could be at 0.8 and then it's good. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Good. Enough for the floor. We've been talking about the floor this whole time, so enough for the floor. One thing that is on the floor that I definitely want to do is the carpet. And carpets are actually very easy to make in Blender. One of the things to keep in mind though is that ideally the aspect ratio should match, which it doesn't do in this case. So to import an image already UV unwrapped with the correct aspect ratio, there's actually an add-on in Blender that does that. That's called Import Images as Planes. Go to Import, and then we go Images as Planes, and then we can actually just take this picture, import it into our scene, and there we go. It actually has the correct aspect ratio and everything. So Shift S2 to move the cursor there. Select this, Shift S8 to move the selection to the cursor. Then we're gonna hit R and X and 90 to rotate it 90 degrees, you know. And then we hop into top view and we scale it up and see where we end up. Now, one thing you could obviously do is just get another carpet texture, but I actually really like this one. Or we can just now try to scale everything down and kind of make a sort of a compromise, I would say. So messing with the aspect ratio just a little bit until everything works, which you can actually just do by selecting an edge and then hitting G and just moving it. So you just don't want to squash it until it's apparent that it's been squashed. Yeah, so I think we're gonna go with this. Is probably fine. Camera view. Yeah, this is looking good. This is looking good. This is looking really good. So we got a nice little carpet. We're going to head to the particle properties and hit plus, and under hair we now have hair, which is pretty good. If your hair seems to be facing the wrong way, so like downwards, one way in which you can fix this is select the face, so the face of your plane in edit mode, go to mesh, normals, and flip. I have it under my quick favorite, so I can just do this. Cool. So the number of hair is going to be like something like 10,000, I guess. The hair length is going to be 2 centimeters. You can actually type in 2 and then whoops, like 2 centimeters, which is pretty cool. And you can see that, yeah, we got some nice hair now. Very important, to do anything here, you have to click advanced, which is pretty annoying. I don't know why they added this additional work step to actually do this, all of this stuff. It's pretty annoying, but anyways, under the children option here, we're going to probably just get the display amount to something like 15 or something, so that we get some kind of an idea. Especially under the physics, this is where all the funky stuff happens. Turn up the Brownian force and you will see that things get a bit messy. But we can obviously dial that in pretty nicely. Also note that all these hair particles have the same color as the pixels they're originating from, which I think is really cool. But the real fun now begins when we go into particle edit, and we are now actually able to, to give this carpet a little sort of haircut. So you can take the comb tool and now actually just do stuff here. So especially around the bed, when there's a lot of like steps and all of this kind of stuff happening, we're going to flatten that out a little bit. Just a little bit, you know, not too much, especially here at the front. Don't really need too much of that. But on the sides, I definitely want it to be a little bit more chaotic, since people are walking on those places. And so you can also now see that now the number is fixed for obvious reasons, right? Also, almost like the rim of the carpet, I probably want to be like facing outwards a little bit, like this. Then on the other side as well, boom, 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 boom. Just a little bit, just making it a little bit more chaotic than just the Brownian force computer-generated modification of the hair. Yeah, so I think our carpet actually looks really nice and cozy. More materials have to be added to the walls, obviously. It's the same principle. You download a PBR texture from the internet and apply it to the walls, and so then it looks like this. So here we go. I just applied a little material to the bed, a little material to this thing, also according to each other, so that we have some consistency with regards to the materials. I added this little wallpaper to the back wall. I'm not really sure if I like it or not, but it was the best one that I could find. One thing I do want to add now is actually a piece of art, like at the top right here. So we are going to quickly move the cursor there, and we're going to import, again with the images as planes thing, we're going to import a picture. And so I have actually downloaded a bunch of pictures that we could choose from. We're going to quickly move it here and also a bit out of the wall, obviously, because obviously otherwise it would be clipping through otherwise, which isn't good. One thing that you can see is that it doesn't really react to light. Here's a little cool trick in which you can make it react to light in an interesting way so it doesn't look too flat. And what you do is you take, because this is the setup that the images as planes add-on automatically creates, just plugging the alpha of it into the alpha channel and base color to the base color. What we're going to do is we're going to add a color ramp. We are just going to plug the same picture into the color ramp, and then that goes into the roughness output. And what you can see now is that light is reacting differently to different levels of colors. And now if we play around with that, we might be able to find something that actually seems to make sense in a way. And also we can duplicate this color ramp and add a bump node, plug the color of the picture into the color ramp, plug that into the height of the bump node, and plug the normal into the normal. And also now again we can play with the color ramp to just check out what looks good. So we probably want some of those things to pop out a little bit. So this is looking pretty good, I would say, because now this it looks like those things are kind of sticking out as it would if it was actual color. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. That's pretty good. So we're just going to quickly move the cursor there, add a plane in the same spot, rotating it 90 degrees on the x-axis. We are going to be scaling it down according to the aspect ratio, so probably something like this. And this is now going to be for the picture frame. We're going to hit Shift Spacebar I for the insect faces. Here we go. This face is going to be insected like this, and then we're also going to just slightly adjust this Cool. Now we can delete that face so that we have this nice frame over here. E to extrude. And we're just going to notch that out a little bit. Not too much though. That seems cool. Also, don't forget to bevel those edges, because non-beveled edges always aren't realistic. In no case are they realistic. So just take the bevel tool, bevel it out a little bit, scroll up with the mouse wheel to add some geometry, and we get a nice looking frame. Now for this frame, I want a gold material. Also, we're going to shape the smooth, and under the object data properties, under normals, we're going to click auto smooth, and this also fixes our normals, all our normal problems if we have some, and we did have some. So we're going to call this material gold, because that's what I want for this frame. I actually have this very simple gold material, just need to find it. And yeah, this is a nice gold material, I think. Obviously, if we want to have a framed picture, we need a glass panel. So we're actually just going to duplicate this thing and notch that out a little bit, just to have it in front. And if you remember it correctly, we already set up a little glass material for the windows in the other episode. So this is the glass material. It's called Glass 001. So we're just going to search for Glass 001. And here we go. Now we basically just have a window in front of our art piece. One thing I did actually not do yet is make sure that this clock, which is basically the same clock that I have in my bedroom, has the right textures on it. We're going to make a new material, and this is going to be called clock. Also for this cable, because the cable of this is going to be black, I'm just really quickly going to set up a black cable material, just a normal, oh for God's sake, just a normal Principled BSDF, turning down the value to black, and here we go, now it's black. So I'm just going to call this black, then on this one I'm going to have the same material, black, boom, there you go. So I'm just quickly going to get the picture that I got from the internet, which is now here, into here, and you can see that the faces aren't really showing, and that's because something is wrong with the UV map. I'm just going to delete it, make a new one, and here we go. I'm very quickly going to hit G, Y, and 4, so it's moved 4 meters out of the way, and what you can actually do now is just set up the orthographic view so that it basically fits the picture, which is probably like this, I would say. That's probably good. Now we can just go to edit mode, hit A, U, project from view. And you can see that now we have this nice projection from view going on. And there's actually a thing that's called projection from view bounce, which is going to give us a little bit more of an accurate thing now. And now if I move this and scale it around a little bit, we might actually be able to get something that works. Or at least that works well enough for our purposes, let's say that. Now we can select the top faces and also scale those ones in, and we can take the bottom faces and move those ones and rotate stuff and all of those nice things until everything lines up pretty nicely. And I think this is definitely good enough for our purposes. So we are going to very quickly duplicate this and with a color ramp plug this into the emission. And what this is going to allow us into the emission color, and then the emission strength we are just going to put up. And then what this is going to allow us to do is to separate the white from all of the other values. And so it's going to be emitting light only where we want it to be emitting light, which is pretty cool. There you go. Okay, so we got this nice alarm clock. So now we're gonna hit GY -4 to put it back into place. And here we have it. Now if you go to render view again, there is a little hiccup here, but that doesn't really matter too much. You can actually see it's emitting some nice light, and it looks like the alarm clock in my room, which I'm really happy with, honestly. I think that's looking pretty dope. This one here, we are just going to move, by hitting G and X, we're just going to move that to the other side, align it roughly so that it doesn't look stupid anymore. One thing to note though, if you unwrap something from view, is that it's always also going to be on the back, because obviously if you unwrap something from the point of view, it also goes through it, sort of three-dimensionally. So in this case, we have a problem with the back face. So yeah, let's just select those faces that are causing us the problems, hit A, S, scale them down. We do not see the back of this clock anyways. So next, what we want to fix is the balcony and everything about it. I actually quite like the procedure material that we made in the last episode for this railing. Just this very simple setup with a gray color and a noise texture through a color ramp into the roughness actually does the trick for any sort of this kind of metallic material. One thing I now do want to do though is make sure that the floor has a nicer material, because as of now it's not ideal, I think. Perhaps I would say we want like a white tiling floor, because that would, I think, be better. So for the material for the balcony, I've just downloaded a PBR texture, or a PBR material, you should say. The same process again applies here. And now we obviously also need to assign the material to the top face. Also, the faces on the sides do not matter at all because you don't see them from the camera view, so no need to pay any attention to them, really. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna hit assign, and this is what the material looks like right now, and it doesn't look good, to be honest. I think mainly because, again, the base color is missing. I don't know why Node Wrangler doesn't understand that. See, and this is exactly why I like doing this manually, because I now have to fix everything, and it's actually faster for me to just do it all manually and then look at what's going on. And if I want to make any changes in the process, for instance, if the roughness map doesn't have enough information for me, I'm going to throw a color ramp in between and then bring that information out a little more, let's say. You can also see that this UV map is obviously way too big, so I'm going to go S4 probably. So now it's about the this thing and the chair, and if you guys remember, we actually had a nice wooden material for the back of the bed and also for this little thing. And I think this wood pocket 16 is actually a very nice material, and it always makes sense to take the same material for multiple things to have some consistency in your interior design. So I'm going to quickly go here and just apply the same material, really. It's going to take the UV map, hit S and 2 to just scale it up a little bit, see if that looks better. And yeah, it's definitely getting there. I think we just need to scale it up once more, maybe. Yeah, that is looking really good. I'm happy with that. That's good. And then this chair, we have to separate from the cushions, which we can just do by hitting L. Now you can also see that there's actually multiple objects that define the chair. And so the cushions are probably made of less objects, so more as one thing. So I'm just going to select those by hitting L on the keyboard again. And now we're going to hit P to separate that by selection. And now we have a separate object. Here we go. Go to object mode. I'm just going to call this chair cushions, and this one's just going to be chair or something. Yeah, chair and chair cushions. There we go. On the chair, we are going to select the same material. So again, type in 16 for the wood pocket 16. Nice wooden material with a bit of reflectiveness. I'm really into that, actually. I think that looks really good. And also we need to still get the bed frame, like is it called the bed frame? Like the frame for the mattress. We still also need to give that the right material. And guess what? We're just going to take the same material because, again, that just creates consistency in our interior design. It's really hard to get a clean UV map out of a chaotic model. So always when you do this kind of stuff yourself, when you model a blanket yourself with physics simulations, always make sure that you first unwrap the texture on the thing and then run the physics simulation. And then you already have the texture and the UV map. So yeah, I'm just unwrapping those cushions now from view, just so that if we look at it from the camera view, we will at least not see those crazy hiccups from the camera view. That's what I'm aiming at right now. We still have a base color that we can plug into the multiplier node here. And yeah, this is going to give us the main color for the cushions. And I don't like the red, obviously, because that doesn't fit at all. So with a color ramp, you can actually just make it black and white just by plugging it in. And then also you can now mess around with all of those little options that you still have. And I think I'm actually going to try to match this to the color of the texture that I have down here on the carpet. Really quickly, I'm just going to open up this picture in here, which is just called .jpeg for some reason. I want this kind of like more of a yellowish type of color, this one. So I'm going to take this here, I'm going to take the eyedropper tool, I'm going to use it to sample this color, and I think I sampled it from a suboptimal place. Let's try that again. That's even worse than it was before. Yeah, this is the one. Yeah, this is the one. Okay, cool. For the bedsheet, I'm just really quickly going to take the same material as for the cushions, and then on the bedsheet I'm going to make a bunch of adjustments. I mean, the first adjustment would be to have the color just as a pure white, because I don't want the bedsheets to look like yellow or something, because that's not really looking inviting and all of that. So I'm also going to take down the strength on the normal map so that we just get a little bit of information, and that's actually good enough for the most part. Then one thing you can again still do is add a little bit of fur to that, again with a particle system hair. Yeah, it's now probably a bit too long, so we have to, yeah, the problem with the Brownian force is that it makes the hair longer, so we have to make sure that we don't overdo it. Just so that we can see a little bit of the hair, like a tiny little bit, where you can see just, yeah, exactly, we can just see a little bit of fur, and that's exactly what we want. So that's looking good. Cool. Next thing, getting a proper UV map for this blanket is actually close to impossible. And so getting any kind of picture onto this blanket, I think will just actually make it worse. So this one, I think we have to make this material procedurally, which means we will go into the shader editor and do our edits here, all from scratch. We want a little bit of inconsistency, so I'm going to add a noise texture, and I'm going to plug that into a color ramp, and then we will plug the color into the factor, and then the color into the base color, and you can see that now there is a bit of like variance in the thing, you know, just a little bit. Yeah, it's about playing with the color ramp, honestly. And I think with this noise texture, it already starts looking pretty good. We can just take the noise texture, duplicate it, and then take a mix RGB in between and turn up, for instance, the scale of one of those noise textures. And you can see that we now basically have like a noise texture on top of a noise texture. And then also with the mode, but you can just basically go through here and check out all these different modes and see if you find some modes that you like. However, I would not like to have any sort of black values in here. I would like to have it all in the gray area. So, and we can actually do that with the bright contrast node. So the brightness, obviously we can set here. Really easy controls. It's the same thing that you would do in a photo editing suite. The reason why I like doing things from scratch as much as I like just plugging into the stuff is that you actually have full control on top of the blanket, just to give it that little bit of extra touch. I think we can also do that with pretty much anything that has to do with blankets and cotton and wool and all that kind of stuff. Just makes your render more realistic, just adds a little something to it basically. And then if you enable Brownian, make sure to only add like a very, very tiny bit of Brownian, or else your hair will get way too long, which isn't good. And this is exactly the amount that I'm talking about. And now it looks really nice and cozy. One of the things that you can also do, which is what I'm actually going to do now, is get a bump node to also plug this into the normal input, because that is going to definitely make it look a little bit better, or perhaps it's going to make that look, so perhaps that's going to make it look a little bit better. I mean, now it's completely over the top, obviously. If you do take the strength of this down to almost 0 and then come back in with something that's really, really low, but, you know, maybe something like this, then it actually does look like one of those nice gray blankets that you find somewhere. So I think that is pretty cool. Maybe for the ceiling, we want a different texture than for the walls. So I'm just really quickly going to take those faces at the top, and I'm going to take something like maybe I'm even going to take the Wood Parquet 16 again. You have to definitely check this out in render view with all the light and also with the lamp coming from it. We have to check it out. We have to see if this makes it look cozy, if this adds or subtracts from the vibe. And I actually think it does add. I do think it does add. Having this dark ceiling kind of gives it a more of a serious sort of art-oriented vibe. This one might actually work really well, the wood frame. I think it does look good. I am happy with where we've ended up with all of those materials. Next video will be finishing touches, and then that's going to be it for the interior course. So thank you, and until next time.